So today was exciting and overwhelming, primarily because there was a lot of reading to do, just an insane amount of reading. When I woke up today, it was pretty much like winter wonderland everywhere. So when I went to bed last night, I couldn't see a single crystal of snow outside, but this morning it was absolutely stunning and gorgeous. So I quickly woke up, got ready, picked up my camera, and pretty much ended up walking for like 2 hours today. Eventually getting hungry and finding a really nice restaurant to eat breakfast at. I came back and I think I started my day at around 10:30, and there was a lot of reading today, and these are things that I have read over time and throughout the course of this year, and I've always like parked these things in my Pocket app, and I've kind of like labeled these things as areas that I'm interested in investigating and seeing what's happening. And it is 10-year futures. That's the theme of the day. So a lot of this might seem like a little distant, but that was the entire agenda for today. It was like looking at what's happening, what's coming, what technologies are going to reshape the way that we live, the societies that we inhabit, and kind of going from there. And the thing that was also surprising for me today was, even though I think that these are 10-year futures, there's a lot of exciting work happening right now that frankly would not surprise me, at least if something amazing and big happened in the next 1 or 2 years. And it most likely seems that a lot of these areas, there's a lot of potential for something big and kind of game-changing and disruptive to happen in the next 3 years or 3 to 5 years. So I think the process of how I put these together was, like everybody says, follow the money. So I've tried to follow the money. I tried to see where VCs are investing, what are they excited about, what are they writing about, areas that they're predicting that will take off. And when I look at this entire list, and I think I have 12 areas, the top 5 are entirely in life sciences. So that was pretty exciting. Unfortunately, I've not had the opportunity to work as much in that area, or at least as much as I'd like. But it was fascinating to see just the sheer opportunity that these areas have right now. I'm not going to go in depth in all these 12 areas, so I'll probably like give you like a quick glance on what I kind of explored. So the first area is this area that I call cheating death. And when you hear things like 70 is the new 40, and insurance companies are now beginning to get really nervous because life expectancy has increased, and which means they need to shell out more money from their pockets to support the population that's aging, at least not slowly, but but dying at a much later stage. What you're seeing is the impact that medicine has had, but also the impact that better societies and quality of life is having on people around the world. And Calico, which is one of the most exciting companies in the Google Ventures portfolio, is actually trying to tackle extending human life in the short term, but eventually making us immortals. And when I say immortal, obviously you can still die an unnatural death. So, Calico isn't going to be able to revive you after a train or a car accident, but you wouldn't certainly die of a natural disease and so on and so forth. And when you look at what medicine has actually done to people around the world, is it's managed to reduce premature death. It's at least managed to reduce the percentages of how many people or kids and youngsters die from that, and that percentage has become a lot more smaller now. It's also provided immunity from diseases, or at least certain diseases, and it's also helped prolong certain diseases, although not finding cure for things like cancer, which is unfortunate. But this was an area that was extremely exciting, and it was not exciting because it seemed like this dystopic and concept, and somewhere down the line we would all live forever. But it was interesting because of the impact that living forever would have on societies and economies worldwide. So, how can you prepare, or at least even in the short term, let's say Calico manages to, in the next 10 years, increase life expectancy by 120 years. What happens to the world, and what happens to all of these people, and how do you evolve as a society and support people that live beyond 120 years? So that was the first area, cheating death. The second area was this area called bioengineering, which was, again, extremely fascinating. When you look at how we've evolved as a species, we've gone from Homo erectus to Homo sapiens, and it's obviously taken us many, many centuries to evolve as a species. What has happened is, over the years and over these centuries, the DNA has perfected itself. And what bioengineers are trying to tackle is, why wait for another century to perfect the next version of ourselves? Why can't we go and manually edit our gene encoding or a genetic code, and kind of tweak the DNA to perform or actually create better versions of Homo sapiens? So that area, again, was extremely fascinating, obviously contributing to extending life expectancy. The third area was actually something that is pretty well spoken about and well researched, and pretty much everybody knows this, but it actually got to popularity when Elon Musk got up on stage and spoke about it in the form of Neuralink, or at least that's his company. And the objective, and this area is called cyborg engineering. The objective of cyborg engineering primarily is to create symbiosis between man and machine. And as much as they don't talk about it and say it, that is the eventual goal. Is the human brain has a certain capacity, and sure, it's creative and it's done stellar things throughout the last couple of decades and centuries, but it still has superior limitations when it comes to its counterparts when it comes to machines, where the machines are clearly faster at computing and storing information and so on and so forth. So what would that combination of man and machine achieving symbiosis look like? And again, I don't know what Elon Musk's timeline is, as crazy as his timelines seem. But this is something that, if he's gotten up on stage, is at least another couple of years ahead. The fourth area is what I call creating perfect life. And again, like bioengineering, creating perfect life is about going back and using stem cell research to tweak your DNA, tweak your genetic code, but not just the code that you as an individual have, or you as an individual have kind of assumed from your parents, but what if your parents are passing on defective code to you, and the repercussions that you as an individual will have later on in your life because that code was passed on to you. So what stem cell research allows people to do is actually use mitochondrial DNA from another individual that has a better version of that code, and then that code replaces the code, or at least that splice of DNA is being tweaked and replaced, and then that healthy DNA and that healthy genetic code is passed down to you as a child. And I think in 2001 it was made legal in the United Kingdom, primarily in the constraints and in the context of replacing problematic genes. In 2015 it was made legal. In 2001 it was made illegal in the United States. And in last year, actually, CRISPR babies, 2 twins were born. Apparently a scientist in China created the first CRISPR babies, and the first gene edited babies were born, and there was a lot of ethical debate around is it right to do such a thing, what are the constraints, and I believe 100 researchers and scientists in China have actually signed a petition that would be unethical, or at least the way that scientist approached it. The fifth area is this area called non-organic intelligence, and I find this extremely fascinating because our reliance on chemistry is fundamentally limiting us as human beings, and as audacious it is to say that, I think that a lot of the people around the world kind of believe that non-organic intelligence or machines that can transcend both virtual and non-virtual spaces, or virtual and real realms, kind of will allow us, or allow the capacity of human beings to go out and achieve some incredible things. So, building the best version of this example is actually TARS from Interstellar. So, can you create a machine that can both explore virtual worlds and real worlds? And how will you use that? And this could significantly help in interstellar travel and going and living on Mars and conducting research and stuff like that. That kind of easily flows into the next one, which is robot dexterity. And I'm sure you've seen some incredible videos by Boston Dynamics where you have these amazing robots opening doors and doing parkour. And it's fascinating because all along we've had machines embedded in cell phones and in computers and in cameras. But what happens when machines actually begin to make sense of the complexity around the world, or at least around the natural world? And this is fascinating because it's already happening. Autonomous cars is a version of a machine trying to navigate itself in the real world. And that's only going to get extended, and that's only going to get more exciting. Again, what happens to societies where man and machine have to co-inhabit in the next couple of years? It's not happening as the way Hollywood kind of generally portrays it, and I find that extremely funny. But you already have these autonomous cars driving around in Pittsburgh and Phoenix and whatnot. Postmates and Amazon have their autonomous delivery robots coming in. It's already there, so it shouldn't surprise you that this is a couple of years down the line. I believe this is at least 3 or 5 years down the line, again pending regulatory approvals. The seventh one is embedded intelligence, right? And embedded intelligence is where right now we have a couple of devices around our day-to-day lives that are embedded with intelligence, and what happens when the entire world is blanketed with those devices, which is eventually what we're trying to get at. So when you look at the Nest ecosystem, you have your Nest thermostat, you have your Alexa, you have your Google Home, you have your Philips Hue system. What happens when pretty much your entire world, what you eat, how you pay, and what information does that share with other systems and other platforms, and how does that aggregate of data be leveraged to provide better services? Again, significant issues around privacy and all of that, and the sheer ethics that are involved. But again, primarily talking from a technology perspective and what's happening or the changes that are coming about is an aspect of this. The next one is new AI techniques, and this is extremely exciting because when you look at all the buzz that's happening right now, it's primarily because of some specific types of AI techniques that are working really well. And they're working well because computation is cheap and storage is cheap and whatnot. So, backpropagation as a perfect example is a technique that through sheer brute force manages to use a neural net and arrive at decisions. But the machine learning and deep learning of today is extremely cumbersome, right? If you've had the opportunity of working in the field of AI, you know that every single damn thing that you introduce into the machine and into the neural net requires labeled data, and not every single company has labeled data. But the part that I'm really excited and hopeful that new AI techniques are introduced, at least in the next 10 years, is primarily because the techniques that we have right now aren't natural to how human beings learn, or at least aren't natural to how a child learns, right? When you have a child, you're not labeling every goddamn thing around the world for your child and helping the child learn through that. Your child is learning through affordances and experiences and feelings and emotions. And unfortunately, we don't have an AI technique that learns through, or at least is comparative enough for that. All our AI techniques right now are modeled on the human brain and how the human brain uses this neural network to make decisions. But every single technique right now is a giant black box. We can't go back and investigate exactly how backprop works and how this neural net operates and why it ended up with that decision. So I think what's going to happen is new techniques focused on using lesser computation, using lesser data, but it's slightly more natural to how human beings learn is what's going to happen. And also when you think about the sheer cost to climate, because these amazing tech companies have to have so much computation and so much electricity consumption happens, it's insane. The next one is new interaction paradigms. This is something that I'm really excited because the interaction designer in me and the user experience designer in me absolutely jumps at this. Because you have everything from intelligent assistants to immersive environments to mixed reality, and potentially achieving symbiosis with man and machine. And how does that fundamentally change how we interact with computers? Because it's not natural to be sitting at a desk. It's not natural to be digging your head into your phone and burying it right there. And we've kind of ended up creating these unnatural interaction paradigms. And what does that do to, or at least how does the interaction paradigm evolve as we go from here? The 10th one is a global standardized currency. Not necessarily a cryptocurrency, although crypto with its shared value and its trust network is essential. What I'm trying to say is a not fiat-based currency. So not how finances are actually managed right now. We live in an extremely uncertain socio-economic climate where political agendas and certain people controlling certain things kind of dictate the entire world. And this is why I kind of support what Facebook was doing with Libra and what David Marcus and that entire team was doing. Because while in theory that is exactly what we wanted, I kind of didn't support the fact that Facebook was doing that as a company. I absolutely don't support Facebook at all as a company because of just how shady they are. But when you look at every big tech company trying to become a bank, what will eventually happen is a globally recognized currency is going to be distributed around the world. So, imagine Apple coming out tomorrow and saying, you know what, everybody uses an Apple credit card, we're going to make something like an Apple coin, and everybody can have a shared value through that coin. And I think that is something that would eventually happen, or at least will make giant significant strides in the next 10 years. The 11th area is what I call Race to 2030, which is the Paris Agreement. And when you look at the rankings of every giant country right now, and just the sheer failure of every single country to actually even keep up with the expectations of what they kind of promised in that agreement, we haven't fulfilled any of those promises. And especially the United States and the United Kingdom are way bottom on that list. Countries like Sweden are obviously on top. But I think what's going to happen is we're going to really have to question as a society what we're going to be doing with climate change. And if we don't manage to address some of these issues, I think we're all going to be in a big shit show, if I might say. So I'm actually interested in how climate change would come back and impact businesses. Because if you look at Hassan Minhaj's latest, how fast fashion is actually bad for the climate, and none of the sustainability claims that Zara and H&M actually make are actually real. What does that do to the nature of how you as a consumer actually interact with a brand? And how do your individual beliefs actually come back and influence how companies operate? So I think that the next 10 years, as we head towards that 2030 timeline, it's going to be extremely painful, but extremely exciting. And at least I'm hopeful that we manage to do something. And the last one, the 12th one, is actually skills shortage. And skills shortage is something that is extremely important, primarily because the sheer amount of technology, even in this list of 12 that I spoke about, and just how society will change in the next couple of years is fascinating. And I constantly see active professionals right now in the workplace kind of feel extremely disconnected with where the world is heading and the skills that they need, and are significantly falling behind. When you also look at education as a factor that's you have curriculums that are being distributed across schools, universities, and colleges that fundamentally are pretty much old school. And when I say old school, aren't up to mark, and then the conversion of a student into a professional is significantly higher relative to kind of where we were. So we're going to go back and question how we educate our students and how we educate the next generation, but also how we educate people within our workforce currently. And I think companies and governments have to significantly step up their game, and potentially even introducing the concept of UBI. I'm in the Naval Ravikant camp when it comes to UBI, because it is a slippery slope into socialism, as he says it. I do think that there is an aspect of governments and companies distributing funds to individuals and measuring the outcomes of what people do with that. And it could primarily be in the context of them achieving a certain skill. So, Google as a company and Microsoft as a company have already created benefits for people to pick up these new technologies and attend these courses entirely for free. And then there's also an aspect of, if Google as a company uses machine learning and automation to disrupt many jobs, well, then do they end up paying automation taxes? So it's interesting to see how some of these individual things kind of come about. So that was pretty much my entire day. It was 12 really, really in-depth topics of what's happening in these areas, not just from a technology perspective, but when these technologies are begin to get realized, and when these technologies do end up being rolled out, how is it going to impact at least my job and everything that I do. And I try to be as divergent as I possibly could today. So what it'll help me do is try and understand the areas that I would like to go back and explore, and the areas that I would like to go back and kind of investigate further and try to bring into like my craft. So yeah, today was 10-year futures. Tomorrow is going to be 1-year future. So I'm going to try and distill this and try and bubble this down into exactly what's going to happen in the next 1 year, and what changes do I need to make in my craft, in my work, even as an individual, not just as a professional, but even as I live my personal life. What changes do I have to make to start addressing some of these exciting new pieces that are coming about? So yeah, that was pretty much it, and that was a 22-minute long rambling from me. I hope you enjoyed this. If you did, click the like button, share it with people, and if you have questions and thoughts and comments and about the list, or if you think that there's another piece of technology that I should have looked at, write a comment and send me a note, and I'd be curious to see what you ended up thinking about this list. So yeah, until tomorrow, I guess. I'll see you tomorrow. Have a wonderful morning, evening, afternoon, good night. Take care and be well.